I would like to add a pro tip. Remember to ask if they can recommend you to other people in the ecosystem that could add value to your research. Now that we have learned how to interview, I would like everyone to double check if the questions you wrote earlier are open-ended questions. If yes, thumbs up. If not, think about how you can rephrase them. You can check this by asking yourself if your questions can be asked with a simple yes or no, or if you're suggesting the answer in the way you posed the question. If you answer the yes to the above, that's a sign that you have written a closed-ended question. We recommend you to revise your question to encourage discussion and deliberation. Let's give some examples here. An example of a closed question could be, do you think the ability to irrigate is important? And the interview simply said, yes. In an example of how you could turn this into an open-ended question, you could rephrase the question as, what factors are important to you when you're considering to invest in the ability to irrigate? From there, an interviewer will give you a detailed answer and you can easily follow up. If your question allows the interviewer to choose, you might as well think of how you can rephrase it. A probably way to do that would be like this entrepreneur asking a farmer, would you rather buy an irrigation pump that is lightweight or high capacity? And this gave a farmer an answer because he will have to choose between lightweight or high capacity. You can easily rephrase this question by asking, you can rephrase it this way, what do you purchase the irrigation pump that you currently own? What factors will you consider if you buy another pump? This is a great example of expressing your curiosity, wanting to know their pain points. Now that we have learned how to ask questions, let's watch this great example of how we start the discovery interview and get insight on challenges and opportunities of your target interview.
Hi, my name is Ferdinand Turatsinze. I'm a program consultant at the Water for Food Global Institute at the University of Nebraska. The institute works globally on projects to build water and food security. Here in Rwanda, we have several projects to understand and support people in startups and other businesses that work with farmers around irrigation along the whole agricultural value chain. So we are curious to know about your business. Can you start telling us who you are and your business, what you do?
Thank you, Ferdinand. My name is Natacha Akaliza. I'm an entrepreneur. I started in 2019. I sell irrigation equipment and some other construction equipment. In terms of the irrigation equipment, I sell motor pumps, pedal pumps, pipes, and other spare parts that are needed for to have a complete irrigation kit.
Thank you. What are the challenges and the opportunity you find in business since you started?
The main challenge that I have faced since I started in 2019 is COVID-19. It is a challenge that came when no one was prepared. It's not only me, but even I bet other entrepreneurs face this. My business, I import equipment from Dubai and China, but since COVID came, it was hard because I could not go, because transportation was restricted. I could not go to Dubai or China to get my equipment that I sell. So that was a great challenge for me that I didn't know how to navigate.
I think everyone has faced this challenge since the COVID, but how do you try to address that challenge since last year, I guess?
It wasn't easy. I would say that it was a blessing that just happened. I happened to be conversing with my supplier via WhatsApp, because I have his contact, and since we were all restricted, confined to our homes, I had time, so I had time to chat with my supplier. And as we were chatting, I voiced out my concern of how my business has kind of stopped. And then as we were conversing, we tried to find a solution around that, and we managed to find a common ground where I can where he can send me the equipment, and then we can sort out the documents, the payment methods through virtually. So I think that helped. Now I can get my equipment without going to Dubai.
Thank you, Natasha. Glad you were able to address those challenges and manage your business, keep it going through the pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing us the challenges and opportunities that you had in your journey. But now, let's talk about your customers. When you meet your customers, do they care about the price or the quality?
Price.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for sharing us the challenges and opportunities that you've had. And now we're here to talk about the customers. When the customers comes to purchase the product that you offer, what are the factors do they consider?
I think that is a good question. I would say that it varies from customer to customer. When some factors are for certain customer and other factors for other customers. But the main factors in general are like the price, the quality, and familiarity with the equipment. So for example, one customer could come looking for a certain equipment they have seen their neighbor, for example, using, or they have used before. So I think that customer would come looking for, the main factor for that customer is familiarity with the equipment. The other would be the price. Not every customer has the same, can afford the same equipment. So some can afford expensive one, some can afford only the cheap one. So again, I think it varies from one customer to another.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Is there any question that I should have asked you that I probably forgot? And based on the conversation we had, is there any retailer or someone that you recommend me to talk to?
I don't think you have missed any question. In terms of other people that you could talk to, I can link you to, I can give you contacts of other retailers that were in the same field if you'd like to talk to such people.
Thank you so much, Natasha.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you had fun watching the example of Discover interview. I would like to give 5 minutes to Raïssa and Savant to share the experience, do's and don'ts, to conducting Discover interviews, and how long it has taken them to be comfortable.
I started conducting the Discovery interviews in the summer of 2021. At first, I went through a series of meetings with one team members to learn about the experience conducting Discovery interviews. I learned about the strategies of asking open-ended questions and crafting the conversation. I read the interview notes conducted by one team in Rwanda, and honestly, this not helped me to have a better understanding of the key players, business models, distribution channels, and associated research questions in the education ecosystem in Rwanda. This summer, I had a chance to go to Rwanda where I interviewed the farmers, agronomists, and equipment retailers. Some interviews were formal while others were informal. My first Discovery interview was with the farmer. That day, I visited him in the forum and had a long conversation about government subsidy programs, irrigation farm market, and irrigation technology. I had a chance to see the farmer using a diesel pan. In this interview and many others, we were speaking the local language Kinyarwanda. And my ability to speak the local language was an advantage and allowed for easy communication. My Discovery interviews with the government agronomists were formal compared to others and required me to be more prepared. I always started with a series of questions that I wanted to ask and potential follow-up questions, and this depended on the conversation and the responses of the interviewer. The more interviews I had, the more I felt knowledgeable about English ecosystem in Rwanda, and the more confident I was with the next conversations. Even though this was a new experience, conducting the discovery interviews, I quickly realized this is a skill that I can duplicate in other research contexts where I need to ask questions and collect information. As a piece of advice, be curious, lower expectations, and be prepared.
Thank you, Savant, for sharing your experience with us today. And I'm glad the interviews we did helped you are conducting yours. So for me, I started conducting discovery interviews back in 2019 when I was interning with Water for Food. I could honestly say it was hard at first. For example, I remember during the interview conducting on a cooperative in the eastern part of Rwanda, I was so focused on listening, writing up the interview, what the interview was saying, and trying to come up with follow-up questions all at the same time. That wasn't working for me because I was missing out on a lot of information the interviewee was saying. So looking back now that I've had more experience with conducting interviews, I've learned it's important to have two people in the interview, one asking questions and the other one taking notes of what the interview is saying. One of the other challenges was being able to ask questions in a way that I could get inside and have a deeper understanding of what the interview is communicating. So while conducting your interviews, avoid asking yes or no questions, because this will leave the interview with limited information, and you don't want that, because an interviewer, you need information, not confirmation of your hypothesis. But there's always a way to fix this in case it happens. Try and follow up with why not, and how questions. This follow-up question open the discussion and give you a chance to get more information. So the key takeaway from me is try to not beat yourself up, because it gets better with time. Thank you so much for your attention. Back to you, Ferdinand.
Thank you, Raïssa and Savant. I understand this was a lot of information. You probably have some questions. I can see most of you, 50% were interested to know how to conduct the interview to gain insight, and 17% interested to know what to expect while interviewing, and the rest, 3%, interested in common mistakes to avoid. So you probably have some questions. If you have them, please type them in the chat, and then the team will help me to answer those questions. Here is a great question for every panelist. What is something you learned about the ag entrepreneurship during discovery interviews that surprised you or that you weren't expecting? Let's start from Grace.
Thank you, Ferdinand. During our interview, what surprised me, it was kind of like the way I was used to. So I used to like to talk to people without taking notes, and I could take also like interviewing someone while not paying attention. But like what surprised me is like, if you're going to have an interview, you need to have someone, a note taker, that will help you to take notes while you're listening. Another thing that surprised me is like you have to study someone, the interviewee, prior to the interview, so that you don't ask him questions that are related maybe to his CV that you could, or his biography that you could have learned before having interview. Thank you.
Natacha, you can go next.
For me, what I have learned about ag entrepreneurship during our discovery interviews was that some people start like ag businesses without doing like research, without going out and asking this kind of doing the discovery interviews to know who their target or like their target market is, or whether this service is needed. And then you would find, like we found that some of these businesses had failed because of like not doing proper research before you start something. So, and also something else was like seeing someone else starting something, and then you also started because it was a success for that person. in ag environment, for example, exporting chili, that was like common. And so that which is a mistake because they still failed to enter that like that market or that niche of the business. So I think those are my top lessons that I learned while doing this discovery interviews.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Natasha, I can go next. I think like Grace and Natasha touched based on most of the things that I was gonna say. But another thing is like we really, when we're doing like interviews, we really find like different like innovative things that people in Rwanda like youth are doing in ag, and that was really amazing to see that like even after like COVID and everything, that there's still like really young people who wants to be involved in ag entrepreneurs and finding like women, especially like women. Like we had like an interview with a girl called Ange who does like pumpkins. So it was nice to also see like the involvement of women in agri-entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Raïssa and the team. As an intern coming from the US and going to Rwanda to conduct discovery interviews, one of the things that was really amazing to me was the power of speaking the local language, Kinyarwanda, because you could really like talk to the people in informal and formal way, talking to the farmers again into their farms and asking them questions. It was really easy because I was not like speaking English like this, but also like, speaking Kinyarwanda and having stories and simply the power of asking informal questions and conversation other than just like doing a research on a given company, but also to talking to the farmer and visiting them on the farm. I think it really means a lot to them, and that really helped me to conduct and collect information that I wanted.
That's great points Savant mentioned, because when you're conducting a discovery interview, there's so many things you have to consider, including culture and where you're going, of course, language. So I would say when we started conducting discovery interviews, we started trying to understand the impact of COVID-19 on entrepreneurship. And I could see how entrepreneurs were trying hard to adjust on COVID, on the pandemic, and I could see how innovative they are getting. So it was so nice, and I wasn't expecting to see so many people trying to adjust their business based on the current situation. And that was a great thing. That was a great lesson that I learned in the process. Here we have another question. It says, what can you do to be comfortable with interviewing people this way? It can seem very artificial approach. I'll pass this to Savant. Probably he's the one who conducted discovery interview very earlier. Probably you tell us.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on this while reflecting on our interview. One of the things that Ferdinand mentioned is simply the culture, knowing who you're going to talk to. I mean, like for many people, there is the meaning of time and being late and things like that, which doesn't even like really make sense to many other people. You can have an interview with someone in, I don't want to say Rwanda, but any other country, then they can be late 30 minutes and they feel like, no, I don't want to get like into this type of discussions. But yeah, knowing the culture, that's one thing. And another is simply asking questions that are open-ended, because when you asking closed questions, you simply can have like an interview for 5 minutes and then that's it. That also another thing is simply trying to adjust, because for most of us, you just have questions and list of questions that you want to ask, but through the interview, through the responses, you get like new insight and the new questions that you can have. So I think when you just simply make the research and have those questions and then be able to just simply adjust, that really helps to be comfortable with the conversation, as long as you're just like knowledgeable and made some research in the farmer or any other institution that you wanted to have an interview with.
I think it's around probably, yes, adjusting is a great point. I remember my first interview was with Pack and Pig. It's a company from here in Rwanda, and it was really so bad because I was focused on the script that I had when I was going to conduct a discovery interview, and it like I could see myself trembling in the interview, but the more I conduct interviews, the better I got. And probably I'll pass this to Grace to tell us more on how she got comfortable with interviews.
Yeah, thank you, Ferdinand. Maybe you touched an example I was going to give out, like the first interview we had. Oh my God, if I remember about that, I feel like I don't want even to see that picture. But like as time like went on, having more interviews, I could feel like more comfortable, like talking to people, like not memorize the questions I'm going to ask, and like to feel comfortable with the entrepreneurs I'm going to ask, to feel free, like to engage everyone. Like if maybe I'm missing out some questions to ask them, I could ask, is there any question I've missed out to ask you, like that? And it's like before we could tell them we're not like maybe surveying your business, we're just like we want to know more about what your business is, what you're doing, what are challenges, not to copy your business, but like to know more of the whole ecosystem of the work you're doing is treating you, like that. Like you have to engage the interviewer in that interview you're having, so that he feels comfortable and you feel comfortable too.
Thank you, Grace. Paul, that answers also the next question of what is the advantage of having a discovery interview versus just sending a paper of survey? Probably Natasha could add more clarification on this.
Just sending a paper survey, it's guiding the person who is answering the questions. So if you want proper like answers to get the full I think picture, you have to be there. Also, like connect with the person on a personal level, because this person is going to just answer based on like what they're saying on the paper. But like if you're asking them the questions, as Savant said, like maybe speaking the language, then you connect to like with this person you're interviewing more to a personal level. Therefore, this person is going to give you more answers that you would not otherwise get from just a paper survey. Also, I think no one is going, like when someone is talking, there are things that you catch up from what they're saying. So following up on that also is key. And you wouldn't see it on a paper survey, because this person is just like, these are kind of closed-ended questions. They're just going to answer what they're reading. So I think that is where, like, that is the advantage of having a discovery interview versus just a paper survey.
Thank you, Natasha. That's a great point, because when you're doing the discovery interview, it's easy to follow up after someone asks a question. But when it's on the paper, it's really hard. You're going to do the follow-ups on paper. So I think it saves you time and it makes the discussion more better. Here we have another question. Can you talk a little bit about how you adjusted your interview to the culture in Rwanda? Raïssa.
Yeah, thank you, Ferdinand. I think one of the things maybe in Rwanda is just like to know that like emails sometimes are not the best way to communicate. So like maybe figuring out like why conducting your interviews, figuring out like what works in the area that you're in. If it's email, if it's a phone call, if it's like working in the office, just to act like that interview that you want to conduct, just like knowing exactly what will work for you and the people that you want to interview. And another thing, like again, like also knowing like the culture thing is also like a big thing, like language. Sometimes like maybe having a person next to you that speaks the same language. I know like sometimes when the DYF team came in Rwanda, they could have like somebody else who speaks like Kinyarwanda just to translate and have like that easy communication flow. So like also that would help like have an easy interview.
Thank you, Raïssa. Grace.
Maybe to add on, like what Raïssa said, like most of interviews we had, we could ask someone, depending on the context of Rwanda, maybe in our culture, people are not all, like some are not used to emails, some are not used to maybe like to to send him a message maybe in English. So we could use our mother tongue, Kinyarwanda. We could use phone calls. That's the best way. And also to schedule the meeting. It's hard that you schedule the meeting a month before. We could set the meetings maybe 2 days, 3 days before, maybe someone could confirm. Maybe that's how people here are used to that. To professional people, we could use emails. Like maybe people in the banks, people working in the government institutions, we could use emails. But like other people, like farmers, small entrepreneurs, startups, we could just use phone calls and WhatsApp, because that would be the easiest way for us to have those kind of interviews we had.
Thank you, Grace. Another thing that I can add on is to be specific when you are asking your questions. You don't want to ask personal questions, like you don't want to ask like salary or something like that related to someone's, like related to personal reason. So here we have another question. If I'm interested in starting a business, how can I use discovery interviews to help me have a successful business? How is this useful to me if I'm a startup founder? Savant mentioned something about how to understand, I guess Natacha who said something related to understand the ecosystem, why you're going to understand the market, and probably I'll pass this to Raïssa to explore more, to talk more about how to understand the market.
All right, thank you, Ferdinand. I think maybe like one of the things is not just like sitting in the office and waiting for answers to get to you. Just like get out there and like get out and get knowledge and just like ask questions that you want to get answered. That is what Natacha was touching on about like market research, just like knowing what the clients need, like asking like those open-ended questions, like what are you looking in products, just like to know exactly what they need in terms of like your products, and then just like ask like those questions that you think you would want answers to.
Thank you. So why she means is like understand the pain points before you can even say this is your business. Thank you, Raïssa. So we have another question here. Farmers are cautious in giving the right answers for different questions. How do we approach to get the right answer, and how do we validate the answers? Thank you. This is a great question. I'll pass this to Grace.
Thank you. I think farmers are the most, lovely people to talk to and to learn from. As you create an environment that is friendly to the farmer, the more that you talk to them, the more you understand their language, because some may, like a farmer may not say, I'm getting profit. Every farmer, a rich farmer, poor farmer, all of them, they may say, I'm not getting the profit. But like there's a time once, the more you talk to him, like, and maybe you challenge him through like these open-ended questions, the more you learn what he's saying, and like he's giving you exactly, not exactly, but like he's making you like, let's say, approaching the answer you may need. He may not say the answer directly, but like as someone who is talking to the farmer, you understand what he's saying. You pick from what he said. Not everything that he said may be true. You may challenge him in other ways, but like everything the farmer may tell you, you pick the main points depending on your interested topic you want to, or your interested answers you wanted from him.
Thank you, Grace. That was a great answer. Talking about personal experience, I would say when you're approaching them, probably here I'll give experience here in Southern Africa, probably focusing in Rwanda. Most of the smallholder farmers don't know these technical words. So you have to be cautious on using those technical words. Try to use the language they understand, try to adjust on the environment that you find there. I think that's most of all. Natacha, do you have anything you could add on?
Something else that I would add on that is how you introduce yourself to the farmer. So if you say that I work for an NGO or if I work for a bank, this person is going to expect that you give them money. So how you also like approach this conversation, how you like you introduce yourself to these farmers is going to influence the answers they are going to give you. Also, if you have like a book and a paper you're writing, they will immediately know that you want information from them. So also keeping in mind that like how you present yourself to the farmers is going to influence the answers they are going to give, is going to help you and like get the most out of these interviews from the farmers.
Thank you so much, Natasha, and thank you everyone for your questions. This brings us to the end of our session. We'd love also to thank you for your active participation. We'll share some resources and discover interviews on waterforfood.nebraska.edu. Would really love to hear whether you end up using anything you heard today in the coming months and years. If you do, please let us know. And thank you so much. We are so glad we had you. Thank you.